see as next on the horizon, but more broadly about the marketplace and what I think are very, very positive trends, the marketplace into which you are selling units, I think, very, very successfully. So just quickly by background, I think most of you know, but when we started the district back when I was 14 years old in 1990, we had a huge set of challenges in this city. It was a place that was perceived as dirty and dangerous. It was still in an environment where everybody was looking to leave the city, both with jobs as well as with residential. And I mean, I thank Gary for the credit, but this has really been a huge effort of the business community, partnership with lots of people, to transform the public environment in Center City, make sure it's been clean and safe, to make sure it's well lit, to install signs, directional information about transit. And we've steadily built up that role of the Center City District through the 90s, financing capital improvements at the end of the 90s. And then at the beginning of the last decade, initially focused on the Benjamin Franklin Parkway, but more broadly as we saw, one, this growing residential trend, and two, the importance of public amenities to workers in the city, we began to look at how we do more than just clean, safe, well-lit sidewalks, and began to focus on other parks and public spaces. So we started modestly on the Parkway, did Cafe Cray, which you probably can't see from here, on the 1600 block, did some other park improvements on the Parkway, renovated a little pocket park on the 1700 block of Chestnut Street called Collins Park, and then in 2012 opened Sister Cities Park, which is right on Logan Circle in front of the cathedral just north of the Four Seasons, deliberately as a children's park aimed at what we saw as this huge and growing demographic of families with kids that want to stay in the city. Obviously, this is not the day to visit that park, but the minute the water gets turned back on, I mean, it's been a hugely successful park, overwhelmed with young children running around in fountains, enjoying the public space, and it really inspired us to really pick up and continue with this project that you see out the window. Everybody keeps asking, well, what's going on and when will it be done? I think I've talked about this before, but let me start at the lowest level and just bring you up to the surface, which is that fundamentally that site sits over the intersection of the Broad Street line, the Market Street line, the subway surface line, and 1 block from the regional rail lines. And any of you who knew that plaza knew what a dismal, disgusting experience it was to try to access transit from there. You knew you could only exit the Market Street line, and finding your way through the maze that was designed as a rabbit warren to protect hamsters and other things underground. So we have brought down, for this location, handicap accessible elevators that will bring people right to the Market Street line. So east and west, there are elevators from the surface that go down to the platform of the Market Street line. At the other end in the building that is also the cafe building, there are elevators that go right down to the subway surface line connecting you to University City. And then at the concourse level, which is below the surface, we have completely reconstructed that lower level with the primary goal of, one, creating a clear, direct space. Those of you who know that space, the curving boundaries, I described it as the result of a studio, a design studio challenge to architects. Please design the most scary and dangerous space you can, with corners you can't see around, with sort of strange nooks and crannies. There are clear straight lines, but most importantly, you will walk down, and those of you who are by the window, there are 2 openings which will be the glass entrances to the subway. You will walk down into a room that will provide you an entrance to the Broad Street line, an entrance to the Market Street line. So we are positioning this as the gateway to the sports complex, the gateway to University City, the gateway to Temple, the gateway to all the neighborhoods in the city and region, to make it a major transit destination and a transit origination point. We are introducing real-time information underground, so that will tell you exactly when the trains below will be coming and departing. So a sort of state-of-the-art transit center. But clearly what everybody's waiting for, what we're waiting for at the end of the Ice Age, is what we are aiming at for September at this point, which is the opening of this as a really first-class civic space. We were inspired in the work we're doing by Post Office Square in Boston, by Bryant Park in New York, by Millennial Park in Chicago, really first-class public spaces for residents, for office workers, for visitors, at the very center of the city. I mean, this is the center square, this is the very center of the city, And so at the northern end, that white structure will be a cafe building, and we will soon be announcing our cafe operator. There will be, as I said, elevators that will take you down to the subway system, an outdoor seating terrace immediately in front of that building. When you're sitting there, you're looking right up the Benjamin Franklin Parkway at the Art Museum, so a kind of link between the Art Museum, the Barns, and Center City. That cafe is directly visible from the convention center, so that people coming from the convention center, Broad Street entrance, will use this space to connect all the restaurants and retail that are here. And a great fountain area in front, a flat surface. You know the pond that we have for the children's fountain where kids are running through it will have a flat surface like that that turns off. Because on that surface we will be able to program concerts, farmers markets, winter ice skating. We see this as a programmed, very, very well managed space. And then at this end, sort of just customized for the residents of this building, is a great open green lawn surrounded by tree grows with movable chairs and tables, so that it will be a green space right in the center of William Penn's historic plan. And we expect that to be animated with small, intimate concerts. We may be actually talking about a dog walking area there. That's sort of the icing on the cake. I never got a dog out or referred to as icing, but clearly we're working on a whole series of individual amenities. And until the Ice Age set in, we were on course for a Labor Day opening. We are working right now with all the trades and others to see if we can do some acceleration the minute this weather ends. So stay tuned on that. But we expect this to be a really signature park that will be managed by the CCD through a long-term lease, programmed by us, run at the same quality standard that we're doing at sister cities and other parks. But when you create a park, it's not just for the creation of a park, it's to really leverage other activity. And clearly the folks here at the Residence at Ritz already, as you know, have a wonderful coffee shop on the ground floor. They have plans to bring an outdoor chair and table, sort of cafe area in front of this building, so we start getting public spaces emerging here. Between the two Penn Center buildings, we're in conversations, as is the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society, about how that could be activated. It's a wonderful space visually and a dismal space in reality. So we see Dilworth as sort of the stimulus for other improvements. And if you read this morning's paper, you see that whatever disagreement the mayor and the council president had, they've resolved, and they're announcing plans now to go forward with the improvement of JFK Plaza, Love Park. So see Dilworth Plaza not just as the personal amenity for people in this building, which it clearly will be, but see it as part of a network of really quality public spaces that add to what we have at Washington Square, what we have at Rittenhouse Square, what we have on the Parkway. And it's being done simply because it's key to keeping residents in the city. It's key to attracting workers and retaining workers. And as you all know, I mean, you're living in the digital world. You can be sitting any place and working. Why not sit in a great public space? And so that's the path we're on. We see that as opening this September. Again, if we get a couple breaks in the weather and a few other things, we were going to push that a little bit further. But it's part of a long-term strategy, which also is going on in neighborhoods. Obviously, as you're selling homes to people, they're not only buying the house, they're asking about dog walking areas, they're asking about parks, and they're obviously asking about schools, which I want to come back to. And so to us, there is a long-term strategy for the downtown, for this city as a whole, that is not just about jobs and residents, about creating a public environment where people who want to be in cities can really enjoy this city. And let me use that as a transition point to obviously talk about why I'm so upbeat about the market, why projects like this excite me so much, and why all the proposed development I'm continuing to hear about is so encouraging, and why you're all in the profession you're in. And I think you may have heard me talk about this before. I always love to, I teach out at the University of Pennsylvania one course each year, and I love to stun, just like I do with my kids, to say, my first car was a 1964 Volkswagen, and I filled that car up, the whole tank, for $3.20. The whole damn tank, not 1 gallon, the whole tank. So that type of fuel cost, which determined development patterns in the 60s, 70s, and into the 80s, is one that fueled huge sprawl. The development of the suburbs, no criticism of them, but completely auto-oriented places. That clearly, and those energy costs clearly put places like Philadelphia at a huge competitive advantage. If you could drive everybody everywhere really cheaply, why live in the middle of congestion? That was the argument. Everyone would have their own backyard. That clearly has changed. A lot of you in this room don't even remember gas prices below $3 a gallon, let alone 27 or 28 cents, which is etched in the back of my head. And those of you who are old enough in the room, S&H green stamps that used to come with your gas. But that's a permanent change. It's a permanent change that has altered the dynamics of real estate, tilting the market in favor of cities. Number two, while we've struggled at times and now with the governor providing funding, a transit system that connects this downtown to the region is absolutely a key competitive advantage. People don't want to pay a lot of time, don't want to spend a lot of time and pay a lot of money for commuting. If they're not within a live-work environment, transit is increasingly important, whether it's in Denver where they're building new systems, Houston where they're building new systems, or Philadelphia where we're reinvesting. So a transit-oriented space, a walkable space is really key. And that ties to the demographics, which you are obviously experience every single day. We have empty nesters, people who got tired of cutting their lawns, right? Jealous of their kids who are having a good time living downtown. Why am I not in the middle of that? So I see envy as a huge motivator for empty nesters, right? But seriously, it is that live near work, or live near arts and culture, which we added dramatically in the city, live near quality restaurants that are the key selling points of cities. So you've got this great transit orientation, you've got a much more sustainable environment here, and if you just take the area which we're defining as Greater Center City, and it's already pushing beyond this, but Girard Avenue at the north, Tasker to the south, river to river, 40% of the people in that area work within that area. Another 12% work in University City. 62% of all those people get to work each day without a car. Not to say a car is not important, we all love our cars and use our cars, but when 2/3 can get to work by walking, by biking, by transit, that's a huge change and a huge competitive advantage, especially if there are restaurants nearby, outdoor cafes, and great quality public spaces. So those energy cost changes, those cultural preferences for cities, demographic changes, empty nesters, and obviously millennials is driving a market which is not just a flash in the pan. It's really clear that this city and cities like this did better through the recession than places that were purely single use, purely dependent on the automobile. That's a permanent change, which is shaping the markets of the city. The other trends which have been really good for us, obviously, is our huge strength in education and healthcare. It's our dominant employment sector citywide, second most important employment sector here in Center City, and probably 30 to 40, if not more, percent of the people you are selling houses to are working for some educational or healthcare institution within the city. That sector, those employers, have been recession-proof so far. They have gone right through this recession, adding jobs, but they are very fortunately not functioning like the dinosaurs of our manufacturing economy in the 1950s who said this is forever. You know, we'll just sit on our rear ends and the market will continue to come our way. If you look at what John Fry is doing out at Drexel, which is figuring out how to stimulate the growth of new firms, to give birth to new technology companies, to bring other firms in. If you look at the work that's happening at the Science Center at Penn, the proposed plans along the Lower Schuylkill, there is really a major strategy in the city to take and grow the next economy out of the healthcare and educational institutions. So really thinking about the future, I think, is really key. One of the constraints and one of the things for you who are obviously in a business of selling housing that it'd be, I think, really important over the next couple of years is to weigh in on the broader competitiveness of our tax structure in the city. There's been a lot of focus on 10-year tax abatement, no 10-year tax abatement. That to me is the tip of the iceberg. We made huge progress lowering our wage tax from $496 to $396 in a decade from the mid-90s up through the recession. We need to set as a course to get that wage tax to $296 in 10 years from now. That's a huge barrier still to employees, not as much as it used to be, but getting that down is clearly something that we need to be supporting elected officials.